Everyone arguing about Iran today is asking the wrong question. Most discussions focus on who is right, who started the conflict, or who the aggressor is. But if you want to understand why Iran behaves the way it does today, you have to step back from the headlines and look at the deeper historical forces that shaped the country, because modern Iran did not appear overnight. Its political identity is the result of decades of pressure, reaction, and transformation, shaped primarily by two powerful systems that pushed the country in opposite directions. For much of the 20th century, Iran was ruled by Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, and from the outside, his country appeared to be one of the most modernizing states in the Middle East. Tehran displayed Western fashion, Western universities, and Western cultural influence. Oil revenues were fueling rapid economic growth, and large infrastructure projects were transforming the country's economy. To many observers in the West, Iran looked like a success story of modernization, but beneath that image, there was a more complicated reality. The Shah ruled as an absolute monarch, political opposition was tightly controlled, and his secret police, Savak, monitored and suppressed dissent. At the same time, the country was undergoing extremely rapid westernization. For many Iranians, modernization did not feel like organic progress, but rather like cultural displacement. Religious institutions lost influence. Traditional social structures were disrupted, and many people believed the country was becoming too dependent on foreign powers, particularly the United States and Britain. The memory of the 1953 coup that removed Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh with Western involvement remained deeply embedded in the national consciousness and reinforced the belief that Iran's sovereignty had been compromised. As a result, resentment grew across multiple parts of society. Religious scholars criticized the erosion of Islamic influence, intellectuals criticized authoritarian rule, and economic inequality widened as development concentrated wealth in particular sectors. When change moves too quickly and without broad participation, pressure begins to accumulate beneath the surface of society, and by the late 1970s, that pressure reached a breaking point. In 1979, Iran experienced one of the most dramatic revolutions of the 20th century. The Shah fled the country, Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile, and Iran transformed into the Islamic Republic. For many people involved in the revolution, this transformation represented something deeper than replacing one government with another. It was seen as a moment of reclaiming dignity, sovereignty, and cultural identity after decades in which many Iranians believed their country had drifted too far toward foreign influence. The new system placed religious authority at the center of political life and replaced monarchy with a structure combining republican institutions and clerical oversight under the authority of the supreme leader. Yet, revolutions often carry a paradox. They begin by rejecting one extreme, but the system that replaces it can become another form of concentrated authority. Under the Islamic Republic, power remained centralized. Political opposition again faced restrictions, and the ideological foundation of the state shifted from secular monarchy to religious governance. In effect, Iran had swung from one powerful system to another. This pattern may appear unique, but in fact, it is common in history. When societies lose balance, they often correct themselves by moving strongly in the opposite direction, and ancient philosophical traditions observed this pattern long ago. Within Sanatan philosophy, one of the frameworks used to understand human behavior and social organization is the concept of the three gunas described in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explains that all of nature, including human societies, is shaped by three qualities: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva represents clarity, harmony, and wisdom. Rajas represents ambition, activity, and expansion. Tamas represents inertia, rigidity, and control. In chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that these qualities constantly rise and fall in relation to one another. Sometimes sattva prevails, sometimes rajas dominates, and sometimes tamas takes hold. The key insight is that balance rarely remains stable. Systems tend to oscillate between these forces. When we look at Iran through this lens, the pattern becomes clearer. The Shah's Iran displayed many characteristics of a strongly Rajasic system: rapid modernization, economic ambition, massive development projects, and centralized authority driving expansion at high speed. But when Rajas becomes excessive, it can create instability because economic growth and transformation begin to outpace the cultural and social foundations that support them. When people feel their society has become too chaotic or disconnected from their values, they begin searching for stability and meaning, and that search can push societies toward tamas, toward rigid structures, strict authority, and systems that promise order. The Islamic Revolution can be understood partly as this kind of reaction, a movement seeking to restore cultural identity and moral structure after a period of rapid westernization. Yet when tamas becomes too dominant, new tensions appear. Restrictions increase, dissent builds beneath the surface, and over time societies again begin searching for balance. Ancient Indian texts also describe these dynamics in terms of dharma and adharma. Dharma refers to the principle of balance and order that sustains society, while adharma represents the breakdown of that balance. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that whenever dharma declines and adharma rises, forces emerge that attempt to restore equilibrium in the world. This is not simply a theological statement, but a profound observation about how societies behave over long periods of time. When systems drift too far away from balance, pressures accumulate and eventually produce correction. Yet those corrections themselves are rarely perfect. History tends to move in cycles. Periods of expansion are followed by periods of restriction, periods of order give way to upheaval, and new systems emerge in response to the weaknesses of older ones. Sanatan cosmology expresses this idea through the concept of the yugas, the great cycles of time described in texts such as the Vishnu Purana, in which the stability of dharma gradually declines and societies struggle to maintain equilibrium. In the current age, Kali Yuga Dharma is said to stand on only one of its four legs, a metaphor suggesting that stability becomes fragile and societies experience confusion and disorder. Whether interpreted literally or symbolically, this framework reflects a powerful insight into the nature of human history. Societies rarely remain balanced for long. They move through cycles of imbalance, reaction, and gradual correction. Seen through this lens, Iran's modern history becomes easier to understand. The monarchy represented one attempt to guide the country into modernity through rapid development and centralized authority, while the Islamic Republic represented another attempt grounded in religious identity and cultural autonomy. Both systems emerged in response to the pressures of their time. Both solved certain problems while creating new tensions, and neither represents the final chapter of Iran's story. No civilization remains frozen in a single form forever. Societies evolve as generations change, ideas adapt, and historical pressures accumulate. The Iranian people themselves have lived through monarchy, revolution, war, sanctions, and reform movements within just a few decades. Their country cannot be reduced to a single political narrative. So when people ask why Iran behaves the way it does today, the answer cannot be found only in the present moment. It lies in the deeper historical forces that shape the country and in the dramatic swing between two powerful systems. Ancient wisdom recognized long ago that when balance is lost, societies rarely move directly back to equilibrium. Instead, they swing, sometimes dramatically, from one pole to another, until over time the possibility of balance slowly begins to emerge again.